After the massive disappointment of the superhero clash that occurred in Batman vs. Superman, well, Marvel takes DC to school and shows them how it's done. Captain America Civil War. Now, Captain America Civil War is the 13th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the third Captain America movie, and the start of what we will come to know and probably love as Phase 3 of the MCU. It's also a sequel to Captain America the Winter Soldier and Avengers Age of Ultron. Now the movie picks up where Age of Ultron ended. We have the new formed Avengers, and after something goes horribly wrong during their latest mission, the government finally steps in and they're like, you know what, you guys need to be controlled, you need to be checked. So the UN demands that from now on, the Avengers are no longer a private institution, but they are governed by a panel of UN members. Tony Stark is in favor of that new accord. However, Steve Rogers heavily disagrees. While all of this happens and the Avengers have to pick a side, Bucky is also still on the loose and Steve is after him, which causes even more friction within the Avengers and might just start a war within. Now, I've always been honest with you guys. I'm never fanboying out. Yes, I am a fan of the MCU, but I will tell you if a movie sucks and I will tell you if a movie is amazing. Captain America Civil War is the crown achievement of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is hands down the greatest movie they ever pulled out of their head. And I just released a video where I was ranking all of those 12 movies. Well, now I do have a new number one because Captain America Civil War is fantastic. The Russo brothers did a terrific job in directing this movie, and this is something I realized when watching The Winter Soldier again. The Winter Soldier doesn't really feel like a comic book movie. It's a grounded espionage thriller with a lot of hand-to-hand combat sequences that just happens to incorporate comic book characters and themes. And they really continued to evoke that feeling in Captain America Civil War. There are a lot of terrific combat sequences. From the get-go, this movie starts with a terrific action sequence. We have all those new Avengers and them kicking ass. And again, it's not a lot of CGI. It's actually hand-to-hand combat. And you're like, awesome. And all the characters are relevant. However, this is first and foremost a Captain America movie, which is something I was worried about. I was like, is this just gonna feel like another Avengers flick? No, it's not. This is a Captain America movie. Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes, their friendship and the reason why Steve Rogers is fighting is the driving force behind the movie. However, it also happens to be my favorite portrayal of Iron Man. Yes, Robert Downey Jr. knocks it out of the park and he goes to some really dark emotional places that we have never seen before in an Iron Man movie or in an Avengers flick. Seriously. And the first half of this movie is pretty much just build up, you know, because it is a very interesting and complex plot, but it never feels over convoluted. The plot in this movie, I really gotta give credit to the plot because this might just be the greatest plot in all those movies. Because generally speaking, the plot tends to be the same. There's a generic villain who just wants to destroy the world, and then our hero has to rise to the occasion. However, the characters are always so interesting that we don't care about the plot. This time around, the plot is very important, and since the villain in the movie is really relative, because we have Avengers versus Avengers, we have fleshed out characters. And yes, we actually do have kind of a villain in Daniel Bruhl, but he's not that important. What matters are our main characters. And Steve Rogers, Robert Downey Jr., they knocked it out of the park. I love the relationship between Bucky Barnes and Steve. I love the fact that Steve just wants to fight for his friend. And I was thinking to myself, well, I'm definitely on Iron Man's side because he's always been my favorite Avenger ever. But throughout this film, my perspective changed like 3 times. I was like, oh, I'm definitely on Team Iron Man. Wait a second. Now I gotta hand it to Captain America. And this is what this movie should have been. I was on the edge of my seat throughout most of the runtime of this flick. And yes, This movie also brought back some of the aspects that I loved about Age of Ultron. Scarlet Witch is back. Her character gets fleshed out even more. Vision is back, and I love the relationship between him and Scarlet Witch. Hawkeye is back. He is phenomenal in the movie once again. Black Widow, do I even have to tell you that Black Widow kicks ass and is amazing? Scarlett Johansson gets better with every single movie. But also they brought back Ant-Man, who's hilarious and amazing, and he shows some new cool tricks. Falcon is probably Steve Rogers' most loyal friend, and it's so good to see him back in the movie. And the relationship between Rhodey and Tony Stark is also furthered a little more. It's so great to see Don Cheadle back. But let's get right into it, because this movie introduced two new characters and they did it so well. First up, Black Panther. Cheswin Boswick, I believe that's his name, kills it as Black Panther. I so want to see his movie. That guy is coming after the Winter Soldier with a vengeance. I'm not going to tell you why, but he wants him dead and he's a badass. All the combat sequences involving Black Panther are just phenomenal and I can't wait to see his flick. And Tom Holland as Spider-Man, mark my words, best Spider-Man ever. Especially if you're a fan of the comic books, best Spider-Man ever. Because this is what Spider-Man should have been. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield never got it right. Because this is Spider-Man. He's a shit talker. He's talking throughout all his fighting sequences constantly. And he is a funny guy. And for the very first time, he's a teenager, because Peter Parker is a teenager. And Aunt May is played by Marissa Tomei. And that's just not a bad world to live in, because Aunt May has never been hotter. And the relationship between Tony Stark and Spider-Man is also amazing. And this movie has two big showdowns. The first one is the big clash between the Avengers. We already saw glimpses of that in the trailer. And that has got to be the most creative battle royale we've ever seen in any comic book movie ever. Everyone's ability shines, but there's also a lot of cool hand-to-hand combat. There are a lot of cool elements and ways to integrate even humor into the battle, and everyone shines. Everyone shines during that phenomenal battle royale. And the final battle is an emotional one. It's the fight between Iron Man, Captain America, and the Winter Soldier. And that was so emotional. Seriously, I was just straight up tearing up. That's what Superman versus Batman should have been in Batman v Superman. But it wasn't. This movie gave me that feeling. I was like, holy shit, that's just... It brought the movie that was already great, that was already action-packed, that already was rich when it came to its characters, to a whole new level, because it reached a certain amount of darkness, but it never crossed that specific line. And I was like, amazing. How do you guys manage to do that? Marvel did it again. So to sum it all up, great action sequences, a very, very well-directed sequel to The Winter Soldier, which is superior in every way. All the characters that we loved, that were established and fleshed out in Age of Ultron, return. We have a phenomenal Spider-Man, who happens to be the greatest Spider-Man of all time. Black Panther is a badass. But this movie never got lost in what it was trying to tell, and that's the ongoing story of Steve Rogers. Iron Man has never been more important as well, and the clash of the titans, so to speak, really left a mark on me. I'm so glad to tell you that Captain America Civil War gets the gold medal. As I told you guys, this is the crown achievement. I really believe this to be the greatest movie that the MCU ever produced. And are you more of a Captain America guy or more of an Iron Man guy? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. And if you like what you see here and you want to see more, then just subscribe.